Well, tonight we're very much looking forward to Troy's talk entitled Birding on Safari in Southern Africa. He'll take us on a visual and audio tour of Botswana and the Zambezi River at Victoria Falls. We'll learn about some of the birds there, such as the saddleback stork, the finfoot, as well as other animals that inhabit the area. Troy serves as our club's treasurer. He is a scientist, avid birder, and world traveler, and resides in Dartmouth. Welcome, Troy.
Okay, so I hope you can see my screen right now. Welcome to Africa, everybody. And this is Africa in the wintertime, June 2018 to be precise. And we are going to be visiting a few different areas, the Okavango Delta region in Botswana and Victoria Falls in Zambia. Sorry about that. So here is a map of Africa to kind of get you an idea of where we're headed. So in the north, of course, everyone's familiar with the Great Sahara Desert. So that big dry region, and then in the more towards the center of Africa, we have the rainforest, the Congo. Towards the north, we have Kenya, and another drier region up in Ethiopia. And then as you get down towards Botswana and South Africa, you have a dry region called the Kalahari Desert. And so we're going to be visiting, there's three circles here all kind of overlapping. So these three areas, and look at different habitats in those areas. We did make it also further south, but it's we were golfing. It's a very dangerous area. We were golfing. We're birding on a golf course, and my daughter was hit with a golf ball. So we didn't spend much time there. Very dangerous. We stuck to the north part of South Africa. All right. So here's what the elevation looks like, what the topography looks like, because it's important. It has a big impact on the region. So during the breakup of the continents, you had an area that was raised up in the south. So a lot of the southern part of Africa is high elevation. There was also, you probably have heard of the rift valleys. So kind of a split down through Africa. And so these are valleys caused by that. And this region that we're going to visit, where the Delta is the southern extension of those rift valleys. So that's what causes kind of this depression mill. So think of it as a donut, with high elevation all around and kind of relatively lower elevation here. It's still fairly high, 3,000 feet, but relatively lower. And that contributes to the arid climate. So here's a satellite image of Africa, and you can see that the rivers of Angola are feeding into this delta region here, and it's into this arid region. And almost all the water gets evaporated. And what you would expect in this region is for it to be a big salt flat, or like the Dead Sea, but that's not the case at all. It's actually quite fresh water. And the other amazing thing is that in the rainy season, it rains here, but the water doesn't reach the delta until about 4 or 5 months later during the dry season, when the animals need it most. So it's pretty remarkable. So here's what that delta looks like from a plane as you were flying over it. So you can see that there's water that's inundated these fields, as well as there's a few permanent swamps. And there's lots of islands. In fact, there's close to 150,000 islands here. And what you're also looking at is that with these islands are kind of the desalination plants. So as this, so the water will penetrate into the islands, will flow into the islands. and there'll be evapotranspiration on the islands, and it'll concentrate the salt, and then the salt will get flushed out. And that flushed way deep underground, and that keeps all of this water fresh for the animals there. So the only real practical way to get to Botswana is, or to this part of Botswana, is to is to go by plane. And so here is my daughter Ginger, and she is visiting in the plane. Just one, I'm missing the text on this slide. All right. Anyway, so she arrives by plane. We all arrive by plane on these small on these relatively small islands. And the one thing that they have to do is keep the animals from running in front of the planes as they land. So they'll try to clear out the animals, make sure there's no animals as the plane lands. All right, so give you a little idea about the camp and how that looks. So there is a dining area, and also a place where they prepare the food. And then there's some elephants that are roaming around the camp. And these elephants aren't exactly wild, as I found out. So I think, unfortunately, they're orphaned elephants, and they and then these elephants were then raised in captivity. So they hang around the camp, and they're still intimidating, and it's hard to get to breakfast in the morning when they're blocking your access. At night, they shake the trees, and we have fruits that fall on the tent and that sort of thing. But anyway, our first bird, let's get to the birds. The first bird is actually located up in the rafters of this of the dining area. And this is a lesser striped swallow. I'm glad to see the text made it back. So the lesser striped swallow should remind you a little bit of the barn swallow we have back here in the States. And except that it's got, these stripes on the breast, but it does have these long tails. And these birds will, of course, go out into the marsh and gather insects and that kind of thing. So it is hard to sleep when you have vampire bats hanging over your bed. No, it's not. These are not vampire bats. Those are actually live in South America. And I've run into vampire bats, and they're not much fun. But these fruit bats are harmless. This one's hanging out in the pavilion, and it will fly out and gather figs and other pulpy fruits late in the day or at night. So they're particularly harmless. No problem at all have around. This is another bird that's around camp up in the trees, and you instinctively might say, hey, this is a parrot because it's green, but it's not a parrot at all. It's actually a kind of dove, and if you look at the bill, it's not hooked. It has that dove shaped bill, and here's what this dove will sound like. This dove will eat jackalberries. Jackals are kind of like the coyote of Africa. So jackalberry fruit, buffalo berry, those kind of fruits. Another mammal that's around the camp are these warthogs, and the warthogs are very closely related to pigs. These two warthogs and the piglets often find their way under our tent at night, or towards as we're getting ready for bed. And so that's the safest place in Africa, they feel like, for them. And so every evening we'll say good night, piggies, before we go to bed. So a woodpecker that hangs around the camp is this golden-tailed woodpecker. And now it specializes on one particular prey, and that is termites. So the termites, unlike the termites that are around here, the termites in the tropics and in Africa, they go up the side of the tree and they make this woody structure so they can travel up this tube. And so what the woodpecker does, it comes and it knocks these tubes, breaks up these tubes, and then gets at the termites. It's called golden-tailed woodpecker. It's a little bit like a yellow-shafted flicker. It's kind of got a yellow shaft also on its feathers. And there's several other woodpeckers that look similar to this one. You know, some have more spots in the front and so on. But anyway, just like we have downy and hairy that have kind of similar. So there's others that are similar to this one. So another animal that eats insects are people. So they say that mopane worms taste just like potato chips, but these are actually caterpillars. I was there during in June, so I missed out on this feast. But the locals really enjoy this time of year, and so they gathered these giant caterpillars in the mopane tree. And yeah, delicious. You see a little basil in with their yummy caterpillars. Our food was quite different. They don't feed the tourists this. So another bird that you see in the marsh is a black crake. So, and these are quite easy to see. The black crake is actually a rail. And in Europe and Africa, they call rails with short bills, they call them crakes. So like the sorrel rail that we see here would be called a crake if it was in Europe. So anyway, the rails, of course, are very skinny, and that allows them to get in and out of the reeds very easily. And this guy likes to hang around on the shorelines, and that's his zone of the marsh. And here we have the black crake. Another bird that occupies a similar zone, but it actually looks like it can walk on water, is the African jacana. So it's also looking for invertebrates and also seeds and whatever it can find in this particular zone. Go ahead. Here's another photo of it, and the remarkable thing about the African jacana is its long toes. So that's why it looks like it can walk on water. It can spread out its weight on this really long toes. And look at the beautiful bill. The other neat thing about jacanas is they have this hole in their bill, and the little ones, the little chicks, when they sense danger, they can jump in the water, stick their bill out of the water, and use it as a snorkel until the danger's gone. So it's pretty remarkable. So here's African jacana. So a note that a lot of these vocalizations are designed to intimidate or as a warning. So they're not all pleasant to listen to, but it's what they really sound like. So now this bird is the Senegal cuckoo, and it sounds like cuckoo, and that's what it is related to the European cuckoo. One of the big differences, though, is the European cuckoos, they're parasitized nests, and this bird does not. In fact, the odd thing about the cuckoo is that the smaller males will take care of the chicks. They're mainly the ones that care for the chicks, which is kind of a role reversal for most birds. This bird is also related to the roadrunner, and so that's pretty interesting. So it kind of has a posture of a roadrunner. This is a pretty big bird, and you can see that it's out in the grasses and it's looking for lizards and kind of bigger prey than the other birds were looking for. So you can see that the kukul sounds kind of has a melancholy call. Well, one of the birds that you really hope to see is a Malachite kingfisher, and because the colors are just so vibrant, so it has that malachite gem color quality, and of course you see it in real life flying around. It's just such a beautiful bird. This bird is super focused on catching minnows, and that's part of the reason I could probably get real close to it. They also are super territorial, so if other kingfishers, malachite kingfishers, come close, they will really go after each other, and you have to watch yourself that you don't get speared by their bill or as they're flying through. So here's the malachite kingfisher calls. There's probably have two of them because one of them hits the water if you listen carefully. Here's another view of the malachite kingfisher from above. You can see it's really concentrating on about to dive in for a minnow, and you can see that on the crown it's just a beautiful pattern and colors. So this is the Goliath heron, and it is the biggest heron in the world. It doesn't look so big next to this gigantic log, but it stands over 5 feet tall, bigger than our blue heron, and it requires about 3 large tilapia per day to keep its engines running. In the foreground, is some scat that's either hippo or elephant. I'm not quite sure, but you can see the evidence of bigger creatures passing through here. This raptor is our first raptor is a long-crested eagle, and so it is. And whenever I say eagle, that means it's a really big raptor. So often with about 5-foot wingspan. This bird is a terror in that it will go after a lot of other birds as well as rodents and mice and things. There's also you can see this Devil's Tower-like structure here, which is that's the termite mound. And when I was talking about those islands earlier, the termite mounds often are the center or the beginning of those islands. The islands will center around those termite mounds. And here's the long-crested eagle call. All right, so we mostly traveled by motorboat throughout the delta, the center of the delta, but this is the traditional way that the local peoples have traveled, with the dugout canoes and poles. And you know, the only thing about these is that if you were to encounter a bunch of hippos or a large crocodile, they're kind of tippy and make you pretty nervous. But the guides don't really take us in where they know where those crocodiles are and the hippos, so they avoid that. But what it really allows you to do is get really close to the marsh and see some of the prey that the birds are going after. So a lot of birds eat frogs. Frogs on the menu is on the menu for a lot of birds. These are painted reed frogs. So during the day, as you pass by these blades of grass or these reeds rushes really coming out of the water, these frogs are glued to those rushes, and the birds are searching for these lumps along the blades and for food. And here's another painted reed frog. I'm not sure if these are slightly different species or whether they can change color or what, but this one's kind of pretending to be a dead leaf or something at the base of the reed. And here's a little bittern that we saw as we were passing by. So it's also pretending to be camouflage itself, but probably after some of those frogs. Now, the guide wasn't too familiar with this bird because they're pretty rare, but I recognized it as a bittern because it had its bill pointed in the air like this, and when it flew off, it had that beautiful pattern. But yeah, as I said, they're probably also after those frogs. You don't really hear them very often, but if you were to hear one, here's what they would sound like. Okay, so we're mainly around the center of the delta, and now we're going to move out to the edge of the delta. So we still a few small streams that make it out there, but a lot more of the mammals and different species of birds are in this part of the delta. So we're now in the grasslands of the Kalahari. So here is my family. So we're now traveling by truck. You probably thought that I paid for this trip, and I did not. Actually, my grandparents passed away and left some money to my mother. My mother wanted to take us all on a trip that we would never forget, and my brother and I chose Africa, and the rest of the folks were all game for it. So not too far away you can see the tire treads of the sand. We have a double-banded sand grouse. This one's a female sand grouse, and beautiful patterning. Now the sand grouse is kind of a remarkable species. They gather at the end of the day, and here's what they sound like when they gather in the pond near some ponds towards the end of the day. Here's what the male looks like, and now you can see why it's called the double-banded sand grouse. Now, when they gather at those ponds, they have something called synchronized drinking. So they all together will dip their bills into the water and drink themselves. And then they wade into the water and soak up the water with their feathers. And believe it or not, they will then fly back to their nests, and the chicks will drink the water out of their feathers. So I've never heard other birds that can do that, or that will do that. So that's kind of a remarkable thing. I think that also the natives also can direct themselves to water if they all they have to do is follow the double-banded sand grouse or other kinds of sand grouse at the end of the day to the watering holes. So it's good to know where to go, who to follow when you need to get to water. Just a little bit about our guides and the people of Botswana. So a lot of this ecotourism is one of the main industries in the region, obviously. Also diamond mining, and it helps fund their education. They are as literate as we are, so they're doing quite well overall here. I'm sad about this past couple years because I'm sure they were hurt by the lack of tourism. But this tourism is very important to them, and this is a park where there's no hunting in this area, so It's quite nice. You see this bridge is built by hand. It supports this quite big truck. So it's I'm really impressed. And given all the termites, it's probably pretty high maintenance as well. All right, so along these rivers, you have lots of wildlife, lots of herds of animals, antelope. This is impala, one of the more common antelopes. So these two impala are engaging in battle. Some of the others are looking on and looking out for danger. Not far away, they've caught the attention of a lion. The lion's on the move, and what's remarkable is here's a lion, here's some storks in the foreground, some egrets. So just incredible variety of wildlife attracted to this part of the delta, edge of the delta, where the grassland, meets the savanna, meets the water. So here's a saddle-billed stork. It just looks so artificial to us, this long bill, and then it has some kind of like collar around the bill, which is referred to as the saddle, I guess. And it looks like something's combed back the feathers. But this is all part of this is just the way that they've evolved. Now, something that's different from the stork, a difference between the storks, these storks anyway, and the herons. Herons kind of are happy together. They kind of gather together in mixed flocks, and it's not a big problem. These saddle-billed storks are quite territorial, so you only see one or two at a time. They will chase off any other storks that come close, or even other herons. So they're mainly going after lizards and small animals, as well as they're looking for crustaceans or in the rivers and that sort of thing. All right, the tawny eagle. So this maybe looks like a little bit like a red-tailed hawk, but it's quite a large eagle. Beautiful black and tan color, and this eagle is big enough to catch small antelope. So it's pretty remarkable. But what this eagle really specializes is robbing other birds and other animals of their prey. So they will kind of hang out high in the trees and watch what other animals are doing. And just as that animal captures its prey, it'll swoop down and rob the animal or the bird of the prey. So it's kind of a sneaky way to get dinner, but that's its specialty. All right, so some of the big some of the other antelope in the region that we may not be familiar with. Here's a waterbuck, 500-pound antelope that may look a little bit more like a donkey than an antelope, but it does have those nice big horns. These are pointed forward and pretty interesting markings. Here's probably an antelope here's an antelope you might not be too familiar with, Tsessibi antelope. This one kind of looks a little like a horse, and it's as fast as a horse, fast as a racehorse, fastest antelope in Africa. And one of the reasons I'm showing you some of these antelope is that they're attracting a lot of insects and kind of creating a habitat of their own for some bird to take advantage of. And those birds, the couple species would be the oxpeckers. So we have a red-billed oxpecker and a yellow-billed oxpecker. I saw them both. I did not take these photos, though mine weren't nearly so good. Here's the red-billed on the zebra and the yellow-billed on a Cape buffalo. Cape buffalo is probably the second most dangerous animal in Africa because they're so big and unpredictable. So these birds are mostly symbiotic, so they're catching insects on the animal and doing them a favor most of the time. But they will, from time to time, they will peck their own gash in the animal and attract more insects, or keep a gash open to attract insects. So not always doing what's most beneficial to the animal. So here we have an elephant say, the heck with the oxpeckers, I'm going to give myself a bath and keep those insects off. So the story behind this elephant is we are stopped here for the English style tea in our vehicle. And this elephant, while we were here, just walked super quick right behind us. We didn't hear him at all because they have these very soft feet. And if they're not crashing through the trees and they're just walking along the silty path, you can't hear them at all. So they can move really fast. So he went zipping by, went out, took a bath, he said, drank some water, came back, got the dust, blew it on. He just totally ignored us. We were so inconsequential to him or her. I don't know the difference, but anyway, this it was just quite shocking to see this elephant going about its business, ignoring us entirely and doing it very silently as well. So here's another species that's quite dependent upon the mammals in the region, the crown lapwing. And the reason it's so dependent is because it really needs the grasses to be trimmed to get at its prey. So it roams around in search of areas that are overgrazed, or if there's a fire, then that's good for them too. So it's a little like a plover, but kind of on stilts. Perhaps a taller bird, a crown lapwing, so it's got this beautiful black and white crown. And here's what the crown lapwing sounds like. Sorry, preview there. Okay, one of the tallest birds, in fact, the tallest bird in Africa, aside from the ostrich, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, there's a wattled crane. Wattled cranes are pretty rare, unfortunately. I don't know how much they've been in decline, but they're more or less endangered. So I was lucky to see one from quite a distance, and I really had to do everything I could to get this photograph. But in any case, it's a beautiful, interesting looking bird, and it tends to feed, solo or in pairs like the others, and it also really likes to go after tubers in the water. So it'll stick his entire head underwater to eat the tubers in the river. Here's what this sounds like. It sounds a little bit prehistoric, I would say. All right, so of course there's big cats in Africa, and the big cats is what attracts the most tourists. So here we are watching this leopard in a tree, and it's not only our vehicle. There are 10 other vehicles all the way around the tree, because that's what happens on these safaris. As one guide tells all the other guides where you found the leopard. So, but the leopard doesn't mind all the paparazzi. It's used to that. It's kind of looking out over the, it can see the antelope. It's kind of picking out its dinner, and when it's ready to come off that tree, it just did and pass right by our vehicles as if they're not there. So as long as you stay in your vehicle, it's kind of used to the vehicles. It just ignores the people. So here's what a leopard sounds like. And you can compare that to the male lion, of course. So it's also on the move. So just to make a remark about the lion's roar is you can hear this roar from a long ways away. So at least two of the camps, if you listen carefully, you could always kind of hear a roars in the distance from somewhere. So so they really all know where each other are, the different prides out there, as well as marking their territories and keeping territories. So they keep tabs on each other just by their voice. So of course, what's following these predators around are the vultures, and this vulture, white-backed vulture, indeed will just watch these predators from above and follow them. So I was able to capture this picture of two vultures, one of them in a nest. So they're getting ready to raise some chicks. Now, I would have liked to get a photograph without the, being in silhouette mode, but there's no getting out of the vehicle and walking around the back and, getting a good picture in the sunlight as you would do here, because it's dangerous. And the guys don't let you leave the vehicle really for any reason unless it's nice open, where you're not going to step on something. So there are snakes you can step on. They never know what's sort of hiding in the bushes. You never know, an elephant's just going to be wandering through, or a Cape buffalo. So you pretty much stay in your vehicle and you get the shots that you get. And they're not really allowed to go too much off-roading either. They pretty much have to stay on the roads. That's the rules for the park. But here's what that white-backed vulture looks like in flight, taken by a professional. But this is the best light. This is the white-backed vulture in the best possible light, because once it closes those wings, it has those greasy feathers in the front. And when they're kind of fighting over a carcass with stuff all over them, they're not attractive animals. And neither are the spotted hyena. We went out one evening and were lucky enough to see them at a kill. And they were, again, they're scavengers. But there's actually two species of hyenas. We saw the spotted ones, but there's also brown hyenas in other parts. And here's what the hyenas sound like. So speaking of nighttime predators, here's a Verreaux's eagle owl. So this owl, our guide found up in the tree, and we were very fortunate to see it, because there was a person who was looking for this owl for 2 days and hadn't seen it yet. She was very determined to see it, and our guide was lucky enough to find it. You can see it blends in so well, so not easy to spot. This bird is about 20% larger than a great horned owl, and it will eat, besides eating rodents and other birds, it will eat other owls as well, and other raptors. So quite a ferocious owl. And here's what the owls will sound like at night. Okay, so now we've made it to the hornbills. So there's hornbills all over Africa and Asia, and I had the opportunity to see a few of them. So I'm going to show you a whole different variety of hornbills. We're starting with the African gray hornbill. So this one has a very sharp bill, and it tends to hang out very high in the trees. It's omnivorous, and that's pretty much all I know about the gray hornbill. So here's what this one sounds like. All right, now the yellow-billed hornbill has this beautiful pattern on it, and kind of a larger, maybe a little bit more blunt bill, perhaps. So it kind of likes more shrubby areas. In fact, it really likes those mopane bushes, where all those caterpillars are in during the summer months. And so when those caterpillars are out, they gather by there'll be quite a few of these yellow-billed hornbills gobbling those up, competing to some extent with the humans, perhaps. And then you can also see this bird travels around with a little buddy here down below near his tail. And I'll talk a little bit more about that bird in a moment, but listen to the yellow-billed hornbill. Tiny bit like clucking of a chicken, I guess. So the red-billed hornbill is the most famous hornbill, of course, because of Zazu from The Lion King. So you all probably know about the red-billed hornbill if you've seen The Lion King. So here, once again, he's got his buddy hanging out with him. Once more, we're gonna one more photo, and now we have we see that it's a southern white crowned shrike. So maybe you started to recognize it was a shrike. We have two species of shrikes in North America, northern shrike and loggerhead shrike. And this shrike seems to have kind of a bigger head than those species, I would imagine. It's got that shrike-like bill, very sharp tip to the end of its shrike, and it's not intimidated by other raptors. In fact, it will chase off other raptors, and perhaps the hornbills benefit from that white crowned shrike hanging around, because it will mix in with the hornbills and often kind of wait for the hornbills to do the work, and then it'll go in and grab a snack. So here's what the white crowned shrike sounds like, and you as you'd imagine, it'd probably be a pretty intimidating call. All right, last hornbill, but not the least hornbill, the southern hornbill, and this is very different than the other hornbills. So first of all, the size. So this hornbill is 3 times the size of a raven. So I think ravens are big. This hornbill is gigantic and spends most of its time on the ground, as it says, southern brown hornbill. And it also lives in the wild. If it's not killed by hunters, or it can live to 50 to 60 years old, and in captivity up to 70 years old. So a very long-living bird. And it also won't even start breeding till after 3 to 5 years. So the other thing about it is it's not really intimidated by people. So you can go pretty close to this bird and it won't even budge. Of course, you don't really want to go too close, because you could see that bill. If it was annoyed with you, it could really take out a chunk. In fact, it's also a carnivorous bird, a carnivore. So it only eats meat. So it's going after lizards and snakes and other animals. It probably is also a scavenger. But it's having a rough time of it, is what I've read. And I think I think people maybe run them over. I don't know what the issue is, but of course they take a long while to reach maturity. So they probably breed pretty slowly. So anyway, hopefully they can make a comeback. This is what that southern hornbill sounds like. All right, so another predator in the area is African wild dog, and that's what brings people to this region in particular, because it is the one place where your chances of seeing an African wild dog are very good. This is also called a painted wild dog, because it's got that beautiful white pattern on the back. these dogs are not feared by the locals. They're kind of, you see, kind of mellow. They don't, they don't go after each other, and they're very cooperative. They tend to just pick out the weakest in the herd and go after it, or they will go after, smaller animals, rabbit-like animals and things. So the dogs are kind of to remind me that this particular bird, the arrow-marked babbler, likes to gather in flocks, 5 to 13 birds, and so they're pretty cooperative as well. The arrow markings you can see on the feathers in the front, pretty cool looking markings, and very distinctive. Also red eye, and the babblers. There's about 400 or so babblers around the world. Most of them are in Africa and Asia. We only have one babbler in North America. In fact, only one in the whole New World, and that's the wren tit. And the wren tit lives on the Pacific coast. So if you ever go out there, make sure you look for a here. You probably hear it more often than you'll see it. But the wren tit's the only babbler we have. The babblers, the families are, they occupy all different habitats, and they're pretty different from each other. So they're pretty diverse group. Anyway, here's what this particular arrow-marked babbler sounds like. Kind of a raspy call, but now this one has a more interesting, I would say more beautiful song. This is an orange-breasted bush shrike, so not really a shrike. I mean, it doesn't really act like a shrike. That's the thing. So when I saw this bird, it was in the middle of this tree, and I forever I was trying to see it, and it would just go in and out of the leaves. Couldn't see it. Finally, it came out. I got this photo of it just on the move. So this is the best photo I was able to get. At least I was able to capture some of the colors, nice sulfur colored and orange. So this bird's kind of like it acts like a warbler, but looks like a shrike, has a sharp bill. So maybe more like a vireo. I think the closest thing is it's kind of like a vireo. But anyway, here's what that call sounds like. All right, so here's a really cool eagle, raptor that's considered an eagle, the bateleur. Bateleur in French means acrobat, and I didn't get to witness it, but apparently when when they're doing their display flights, they'll do some acrobatic moves, and I guess because of the way their wings are, they're able to do some pretty amazing ones. So the male on the right here is, it's got kind of a lion mane look to it, so quite impressive, handsome looking bird. On the left here in flight is the female. When the male's in flight, it has more wider black wing bands. So I got to see a female, a male, and then a bunch of juveniles, which are all brown. But they have that same kind of profile. It's like a tall bee profile or something, and very distinctive kind of profile. They are actually pretty rare, is what I've read. It's just that in this particular area of Africa, they seem more common because I saw 4 or 5 of them pretty easily. All right, another bird that gets its name from its display is the roller. So it has a rolling kind of display flight that gives it its name, and it's an iconic bird. They're pretty common in this region, and they have these beautiful, beautiful colors. So people really love to see this bird. So kind of a lilac colors on the front and different color green, turquoise, green, and then on the back kind of also the malachite color and turquoise. So you just can't get a more colorful bird than this, I think. Now their call is maybe not quite as impressive. Look at the thorns though in this tree, and you can see that most of the trees of this region, especially if they're they grow low to the ground, they have to have thorns to keep them from being eaten by all the herbivores. All right, enough of that. Okay, so we are going to move to our third and final area. This is very close to Victoria Falls. This is on the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe. So on one side of the falls is Zambia, the other side of the falls is Zimbabwe. So we're going to go up and down the Zambezi River in this region. So this habitat, yeah, is a different habitat, and it's more woodlands. So we got woodlands, and then you have a very big river kind of flowing through it, and we'll be traveling by boat and also by land around this this territory. So just to kind of give you an idea what another camp looks like. So here is a kind of the dining area, is a central camp over here, and then these little huts are where we were staying. So right in the back porch area was this giant kingfisher, the biggest kingfisher in the world. You can see it catching a tilapia here in the corner. Anyway, remarkable bird. They need to eat you need to catch at least a big tilapia to keep it going. And here's what that kingfisher sounds like. So if you heard that call around here, you'd think, there's a woodpecker, right? There was some signs out as I was walking around a pond and reminding us that you need to be aware of the crocodiles and hippos. You have the crocodiles that can, at any moment, if you don't notice them, they could come out of the water and grab you and pull you in the water. And then what I also learned about hippos is that they like to sleep out on the shore at night. And so if you walk close to the shore in the morning and you wake up a hippo, they will be, they want to get back to the river as fast as possible. And if you're in the way, they're just going to run you over, and they're trucks. It's like getting hit by a truck if they run you over. So I never knew that about hippos. I always thought, oh, they are such a danger in the water, they could attack your boat or something. It never occurred to me that, you could get in the way of one. It's simple as that. It's not that they're necessarily going after you. You're just in the way, that's all. And so here is one of those hippos in the river. And at night, they would have a lot of activities before they went to bed. And here's what they would sound like at night when you're trying to go to sleep. All right, well, the hippos are habitats in them to themselves. And so here we have a hammerkop on the hippo. And I guess it's a good way to catch fish. I'm not quite sure how. I haven't never seen a hammerkop feed. Here's a hammerkop as I've seen them. They kind of tend to be hanging around, but they are listed as herons for a long time. They were grouped with the herons, but I think lately they're grouping them more with pelicans of all birds or groups. So But for the moment, I think in most of the field guides, they're kind of kept in a group by themselves. But anyway, hammerkop in Afrikaans means hammerhead. So it's got this hammerhead. And they do act a lot like herons. I think they would say they act more like herons than pelicans. So just to give you a view of what some of the fish in the river look like. So while I was birding, the guide talked my daughter into going fishing. And to my surprise, she actually caught something and caught this giant catfish, which the guide took home for dinner. What the guide really wanted her to catch was this tigerfish over here. And the tigerfish are the piranhas of this river. You can see their teeth. So if you if you go swimming and if the crocodiles don't get you, the tigerfish might. And you can see the episode of River Monsters to learn more about tigerfish. But in any case, that gives you a couple more fish. So you've seen some tilapia, the catfish, and the tigerfish. That's what's in some of these rivers. Oh, go back up one more time. All right, so just tell you a little story. Well, we're out in this boat, and the guide lost power to the boat, and so we started drifting. And then I was thinking, you know what, we're only a mile upstream from the falls, and here we are drifting. So fortunately, the guide had a radio because he had no oars in the boat. I looked around, there's no oars, so we're drifting, and so he called to make sure that we had help coming in case he couldn't get the motor going, which he did, fortunately. But that was a little bit scary because this is the falls, and Victoria Falls in all its glory. So it is twice as high as Niagara Falls, and you can see all the water. It's the biggest continuous falls in the world when there's enough water flowing through it, and there's plenty when we were there. You can see how much spray comes out of here. So here's probably the best view you can get of the falls, because most of the time all you do is getting spray in your face and you're getting soaking wet. So they don't really tell you that, but it's good. You want to bring a poncho if it's like this. There are also some pretty cool birds around the area, so keep your binoculars dry and your eyes open if you would ever go here. As I said, on one side is Zambia, the other side is Zimbabwe, and you get your passport stamped if you walk on this trail to the other end of the falls. So along the river are some pretty interesting species. So this white crown plover, lapwing rather, lives along the shores, and it requires a very sandy bank to lay its eggs. And you see this depression behind it, where perhaps it was thinking of laying eggs in the future sometime, but they kind of carve out their territory. Now, they're so dependent on the sand, and one of the unfortunate things is that a lot of rivers getting dammed up, and of course that can prevent the sand from accumulating on the shore. So their numbers have been dwindling as the rivers have been dammed up. So kind of a sad thing. But I do know in the Colorado River, they can let the water go periodically through the dam and drain the sand out, and that will provide sand. So I'm hopeful that some of these dams can do the same. Just let the silt go out. It also makes the dam last longer as well. Oh wait, so I wanted to before we go to that one. Here's the what this bird sounds like. You can hear the crocodile, not the crocodiles, the hippos in the background. All right, this is a bird that we again have no equivalent here in North America, barbet. So It's a little like a finch. It has a bill. It's a little bit like a finch, really thick like a finch, but a bit longer. So it's more versatile. So it does eat seeds, but it'll also eats vegetable matter. It will go after insects. A pretty and I've seen these. I've seen barbets in Africa and also Asia. So there are quite a few different species, and a lot of them are quite colorful as well. So here, and they have this particular barbet has a very distinctive call. So you could find them pretty easily if you know that they sound like this. I wanted to show you this kingfisher because we think of kingfishers as catching fish, but this particular kingfisher, which I found, in the middle of a grassy area, doesn't eat fish. It eats grasshoppers. So it was looking for grasshoppers. The wrong time of year too. It was considered a rare bird, an eBird, because it was not supposed to be there in the winter, so more common in the summer. But in any case, this is a kingfisher that looks at grasshoppers, and there's a lot of them around Africa and Asia. I also saw kingfishers that were feeding on insects, mainly in India. So don't think that all kingfishers just eat fish. So I have to show you some of the what we call waxbill finches. Africa is famous for them. Some of these finches are ones that have made it into the pet store trade, perhaps this one as well. And so I was very pleased to get this photograph because it was mostly in the bushes, hard to see, but I got a decent, beautiful pattern, green colors and so on, and pretty interesting call. Which reminds me of a Star Wars character you might recognize. Oh, let me try that one more time. There we go. All right, so we were talking a little bit earlier. I heard mention of red-winged blackbirds and robins. Ursula was talking on them. Well, I don't know how their numbers are doing over time, but these are some of the most abundant birds in the world. So starlings, right? There's 200 million starlings, 200 million or so red-winged blackbirds, 300 million robins, 475 million mourning doves, and even more house sparrows, 740 million house sparrows. But this red-billed keelia that many of you may not have ever heard of, there's 1.5 billion of them. And here's a cloud of red-billed keelias, and I got to see quite a few of them. And so pretty remarkable that there's this bird out there with so many individuals that we just don't even know about. Now, starlings, I wanted to show you kind of what one of the starlings look like in Africa. So here's the lesser blue-eared starling. So but it has a long tail, so it doesn't look much like the starlings we have, but it kind of has that starling face and starling smile, I think. So anyway, that's what one of the starlings look like. One of the largest reptiles in southern Africa is this monitor lizard. And they grow tremendously large. They're the second largest. The crocodile would be the largest. They climb trees. They're omnivorous. They eat fruits. They eat anything they find. So kind of and they're quite common around the rivers here, climbing trees. But there's a bird that climbs trees as well. And what's strange about this bird, it's a grebe, a fin foot. It's kind of like a grebe, so it's got the grebe feet, but it has these claws at the end of the toes, so we can climb up and around the trees. And his favorite place really to be is in under the overhangs in the water, and then we'll climb up into the trees and get a dragonfly larva, occasionally catch snakes. So that's really its favorite place to be. So they're really kind of hard to see normally. I was lucky to catch this one kind of sunning itself, but often they'll be near those overhangs, and so you really have to keep an eye out for it sticking its head up out of the water. Now, unfortunately, these are also in decline, perhaps because of boats or just people clearing out the rivers from of those overhangs. I'm not really quite sure, but reportedly in decline. I have to show you some bee eaters. We have no bee eaters here in North America, but some of them are really beautiful. And so white-fronted bee eater and little bee eater, as the name suggests, they catch bees. So some of these species eat more bees than others, but on average, about 80% of their diet are bees and wasps. And they'll catch a bee and they'll knock the stinger off before they swallow that bee. So here you can hear what a white-fronted bee eater sounds like. Maybe not quite what you would imagine a bee eater to sound like, but that's what you listen for. All right, last but not least is the African fishing eagle. And so this eagle is has a lot of similarities to our bald eagle. So, but look at one of the differences. It's kind of the white neck kind of comes down a bit further. And then if you look at the wings, you see how broad, how wide those wings, how broad those wings are. So perhaps to get a bit more lift for whatever reason than the bald eagle, but they are from the same, they're related to each other. They're among the sea eagles. There's many sea eagles throughout the world. So I'll leave you with one last sound here of the African fish eagle, because it's a bit more impressive than our local bald eagle here. Maybe like a little loonish sound. So thank you very much. Here's one of those Nile crocodiles here, and I have to give credit for all these sounds, or a lot of these sounds come from Xenocanto, which are free. They're free sounds that you can get there. If you're ever wondering, hey, I want to hear a sound in one part of Africa, what it sounds like compared to another part of Africa for the same species, it's a real good place to go to get that. I also want to thank Kim Wilson for helping me do a lot of the editing involved in this talk. So are there any questions?
So Troy, how much hunting or poaching, whatever it is, of birds, did the guides talk about that at all? Like the grouse and stuff?
Too much. Yeah. So I think one interesting thing is that for a number of years, all hunting was banned in Botswana. The politicians, they outright banned all hunting for a period of time. And but unfortunately, that's just lapsed recently. So, but most of the hunting that's going on is the hunting for big game that you hear about. Yeah. The birds in this park, most of these parks are well protected. I haven't heard much about the hunting of birds. There's all the game birds that are around that probably are targets for hunters. But yeah, you don't. I didn't hear any guns, of course, because it was banned probably at the time, and we were
Yeah.
in the parks. But I don't know too much about the hunting of birds.
Yeah. Very cool. Wow. Maybe we should make it a club trip or not.
Yeah, it's unfortunately a very expensive trip. I think there are ways to go to Africa and have a less expensive trip. I think Kruger is a place you could fly into South Africa and get yourself out to Kruger pretty easily. So that's a quite reasonable target if you can just get the plane ticket to South Africa.
Very cool.
Troy, is your brother also a birder?
I wouldn't call him a birder. I have other family members that come close. My two daughters are getting pretty good at it. My brother goes with me, though. He's interested. He's interested in wildlife, interested in nature, as are most of my relatives. So they're pretty tolerant of my birding up to a point. So, but yeah, when I took this trip, this was not a birding trip. This was a trip to see the mammals, but with the idea that the guides knew that I was a birder, so we would they'd also point out the birds. So that was helpful. But I told them it's all right to make mammals a priority, but if we see any cool birds, give me at least a few minutes to see them and photograph them before we move on. So it worked out quite well that way. So, but it's a very different tour than if you say, we're just going for birds and that's it. Because, you hear stories of, bird tours, they'll stop and they're looking at, a few finches on the ground, and you see all these other caravans of tourists pulling up, and what do you see? What do you see? All these finches on the ground. They're like, what? So it can be a very different experience, and the birders can really slow down. Like, you don't really want super birders in with the mammal, people either, because they can be annoying to all those people who want to see the big cats. And so you want to put yourself where you're comfortable and not inconvenience too many other people on these tours.
I never imagined a birder could be annoying.
Well, from what you showed us tonight, you had a good diversity
That
of
was great.
birds on your trip.
Yeah, and I showed the ones that I got the best photos of in part. So there are many more birds I didn't show. Pipits and things. They aren't that impressive, visually. So lots of just incredible diversity there. And yeah, I said I didn't even go. We didn't even go specifically for the birds. So plenty to see, and there's plenty I missed too. There's an owl, a fishing owl, an owl that catches fish out of the stream, and that's a lot of birders go to see that in the Okavango Delta, but I didn't get to see that one. There's a heron that puts its feathers all around and fishes and covers the water and fishes a black heron. And I thought I would get to see one of those. I didn't get to see. So there's plenty I missed. There's plenty of reason to go back. There's 4,000 species in Africa. I only saw 200 maybe.
Well, thank you very much for
Very
sharing it
good.
with us. Great job.
Very good.
You do it.
Terrific. We're good? No more questions?
No.
Okay,
Well,
jammy time.
thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. It was good to see everyone here.
Very nice. One more time Zooming next month, and then April, Kim is going to throw one hell of a party.
Who's
Okay,
on
gang.
next?
Very
Hey,
good.
good night, everyone.
Good night.
Everybody have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Good
Bye.
night.
Thank you so
Troy.
much, Troy.
You're welcome. Great show, Troy. Thank you.